Part two of Southeast Asia is cultural geography. So, just kind of recapping from yesterday, we talked about the physical geography, and kind of one of the main takeaways is that their major, I guess you'd say, moneymaker, their export is their flora, their agriculture, their plants, their flowers, their wood, their trees. All right, so jumping into today, we're going to talk first about population patterns. So, Southeast Asia as a whole, as a region, about 520 million people. It's about 1.5 times the size of the population of the United States. People from Southeast Asia descend from a variety of ethnic groups, including indigenous Indians, so not Native Americans, Indians like from India, Chinese, Arabic, and European descent. Obviously, populations are denser in fertile valleys along the coasts. We've seen that trend in all of our other units. Less dense populations found in the highland areas where it's colder, less access to water, so on and so forth. Singapore is a small area, but has the highest population density. There's a lot of commercial trading and attractions that go on in Singapore, so there are a lot of people that live there in a very small area. Growing population as a whole. Kind of going to talk a little bit here about the population in Cambodia in the 70s. It declined actually for about a 40-year period due to basically a dictator type character, the harsh Khmer Rouge, and their communist beliefs. And these individuals starved, tortured, and executed anyone who was opposed to their regime. So people moved from rural to urban areas in areas like Bangkok, Thailand, and Jakarta. So this is again called urbanization, moving from a rural to an urban area. In Thailand, Bangkok is so overpopulated, the government is offering incentives for people to move to rural communities. So it's kind of like here in the United States where we have certain loans that you can get basically like with no down payment or low interest rate, encouraging people to move into the country. So same thing that's going on here in Thailand, trying to get people to get out of these cities. There's just too many people dying of overpopulation, and the government. There's a lot of crime, so on and so forth. Many people from Southeast Asia immigrated to the U.S. after the Vietnam War, uh, all the way up to the 1990s. Still at a skill deficit in Southeast Asia. So anyone who had any kind of skill or wits about them got the heck out of Vietnam and went to the United States to find work, better life, so on and so forth. Now, the remnants after obviously anytime there's a war in a place, it usually takes a very long time for it to recover and get back to a good state. So that's kind of what's been going on in Vietnam. Talk a little bit about diversity. Well, just to start off, Southeast Asia is a very diverse area. There's in Indonesia alone, there's 300 ethnic groups, 250 languages in Indonesia alone, in this one little area, this one little country. Language families that these different cultures speak, kind of where they come from. Malayo-Polynesian, Polynesia. Means many. Nesia refers to kind of like a group of islands. So Polynesia is an island group. Again, Southeast Asia in itself is basically a bunch of islands. Sino-Tibetan and Mon Khmer. So these are your language families. This is like, for example, like when we talked about Latin America, how French and Spanish they come from the root Latin. So these are kind of the root languages that everybody speaks in Southeast Asia. Religion, we got Buddhism, Islam, are probably our two most practiced. And then there is some Roman Catholic, especially in the Philippines, Taoism, and Confucianism. Buddhism is primarily practiced in Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Islam in Malaysia and Indonesia. And then, obviously, like I said before, the Philippines practice Roman Catholic. I was in the Philippines about 7 years ago, and everyone's Catholic there for the most part. Art, we talk too much about this. This is a traditional Japanese style. The Watts and the pagodas, Not too worried about that. This is again just a little bit more about culture and art and designs, folk tales. Indian, Chinese, and Islamic literature influenced writing, Western themes seen in writing, so the blending of cultures there. Daily life in Southeast Asia, healthcare has improved. There are some really neat cities. Like for example, in Singapore, this particular building here is it's fascinating. There's like a garden at the top. It's just beautiful, really breathtaking architecture going on in some of these cities in Southeast Asia. So overall, in some parts, they're very much. Some parts are very wealthy. Quality of life is very good. Everything seems to be good. And then there are other areas that are less developed and more like you would say third world, I suppose. Healthy and literacy rates are steadily rising in some countries in the region, which is a good thing. Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam are poor and have a lower standard of living. So, Singapore, even some of your other island nations down there, Indonesia, some are a little bit more wealthy. But when you get into Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, up in the Indo-Chinese peninsula, more like in the mainland, if you will, they are more poor. People live in huts, low standard of living, rural dwellings. They practice terrace farming, grow rice. This is also what I saw in the Philippines. Some of this terrace rice farming. I actually got to walk up a mountain that they grew rice on. It was pretty fascinating. I wish I could show you guys pictures, but Indonesia, Malaysia, they have this type of structure called a longhouse, elevated on poles. They can hold up to 100 people. It's kind of like communal living. It's almost like kind of like a hotel, I guess, like an apartment, basically, is what it is. The elevation cools and protects from floods and animals. Um, Food is raised or grown, subsistence farming. People grow rice, they fish for themselves, they grow chicken, vegetables, they make sauces with spices. The spice trade has been a huge, was, and still is a moneymaker in addition to their production of really exotic flowers and trees and plants. So, really, agriculture producing, again, their flora is Southeast Asia's kind of claim to fame. Sports, they play soccer, basketball, and badminton. Religious holidays, a couple like New Year festivals that they celebrate.